All right, good afternoon or good evening, Lorain community. This is our final candidate. This is Tracy Reed. She is the Chief Academic Officer in the Fort Wayne Community Schools. And I'm gonna turn it over to Greg Ring to do some introductions so that Tracy is aware of who is in the room.
Good evening, Tracy. Good to see you again.
Thank you.
It's my pleasure to introduce to you 12 of our community members who were selected by our Academic Distress Commission and our Board of Education. Becky Smith is a retired teacher. Tim Jama represents the Lorain Administrators Association. David Gomez is representing the Lorain Education Association. Barb Piscopo represents the Lorain Historical Society. Marcus Madison is here from Big Brothers and Big Sisters. Tony Gallo is representing the Lorain County Chamber of Commerce. Victor Leandri is here representing El Centro. Bobby Washington is a parent and also represents It Takes a Village. Ed Oley is with us this evening. He is representing Mercy Hospital. Jack Bradley is the mayor of Lorain. Gloria Nolan is a resident. And Jesse Tower is also with us representing Tower Education Organization. So Franco, back to you.
All right, thanks, Greg. And Tracy, I am going to get started with our first question. And that question is to tell the group a little bit about yourself and why you think you are the type of superintendent the Lorain City School District needs right now.
Okay. So I have been in education for close to 25 years. And what I really enjoy is working to do what's best for kids in a diverse district. And when I say diverse, if you look at my background, I was in Cleveland Public, I was in Maple Heights, I went to Benton Harbor, Michigan. All of these districts have high poverty rates, which have a set of challenges that come with them. I'm also currently in Fort Wayne, where again, we have a high poverty rate, but we also have a lot of diversity culturally and linguistically. And so that's one of the areas that I don't like to use the word feel passionate about, but that's one of my things. And I realized that when I went to Benton Harbor and I wanted to make sure that I did all I could do to help kids be successful. My goal was to support principals and teachers. When I was in Maple Heights, I did that. As a principal, I supported my teachers and my leaders in my building to do what was in the best interest of kids. And so as a result, we improved academic achievement. In Fort Wayne, I've had the opportunity to do some of that work in a larger district. However, I will say that you don't have the closeness because it's so large. One of the things I recognize about Northeastern Ohio, that's where I grew up. So even though I didn't grow up in Lorain, being from Sandusky, it's like down the road, so to speak. And so I feel like I have the background, the knowledge, the skills, the temperament. I've grown over the course of my career to be able to lead this kind of a district. It is a challenge. I recognize that by everything that I've read about what's been going on, but it's not something that I shy away from. For some reason, I have the disposition where I can step up to a situation or a challenge and be able to look at it from multiple vantage points and be able to handle myself and handle what comes to me. So I think that I have the academic, the instructional leadership background, the strategic planning type background. I've been in every role, teacher, principal, assistant principal. So I can empathize and understand where all stakeholders are. I've been a mom of public school kids. All of my kids went through public school. So I see it from multiple vantage points. And I think that's an asset for me. Even as a single parent, I was a single parent for a long time. So I understand what parents go through trying to make sure your kids do what they need to do and you connect with school. So I see things from multiple vantage points. And I think that helps me come to the table with a unique perspective to do the work that needs to be done.
Thank you, Tracy.
Mm-hmm.
Question 2, Lorain's report card shows that there is an achievement gap among our minority students. What is one thing you would do to close the gap?
So I'll be honest, it's not a one thing. It's a collaborative effort. One, you have to look at your district's curriculum. You need to identify what, based on student achievement data, whether it's the state test, whether it's your local assessments, determine where are students struggling and how do you provide support. You have to engage parents. So I can't say there's one thing that I would do. I would say there's multiple things that need to be done, and it is collaborative effort, because you need parents, you need teachers involved, you need principals involved. You have to make sure you allocate your resources. One of the things I can say is that my belief is that you put your best teachers with your struggling students because they need them. I think you have to differentiate and you have to meet kids where they are. But at the same time, I recognize that we have to change. When I say change what we do, if I'm doing X, Y, or Z and it's not working, I need to come up with a new strategy. And I think that happens through collaborative professional learning. And I was pleased to see that the district provides, I want to call it an early release time. You provide time in your calendar for teachers to participate in professional learning outside of the regular, what I want to call it, not like just at the end of the day or the beginning of the day. You add time, they're given designated time for professional learning. So, and I know it's not one thing, but I think it's a collaborative effort. And I think you need to talk to each building principal and their teacher leaders to find out what specifically they're doing and, have conversations on what may need to be tweaked.
All right. Thank you, Tracy. Any other follow-up to that question? If not, we can move on to question 3.
This is Victor. I'm going to ask a following question. You have mentioned in regards to parent engagement, and I want to know more in specific about any parent engagement effort that you have done that might be able to transfer or be used here in Lorain with a 40% of Latino parents and maybe 30% of African Americans. So anything specific that you can talk in regards to parent engagement that can be used, that you think it can be used for Latino parents, especially that we have a 40% population in this school district?
I think you have to meet parents where they are. One of the things that I recognize is that our traditional times that parents come in, or we want to have parents come in to have conversations with us about their students, may not be the most convenient time, like during the course of the school day. Many parents work. So how do you create and be adaptable for parents to be able to have conversations? And so with technology, you might be able to utilize that, but then some parents don't have technology. Sometimes you have to go out in the community. We have, as a part of my role and responsibility here in Fort Wayne, I am responsible for our English language program. And so we have parent engagement activities where we go out and our staff does home visits to especially for some of our migrant families. Migrant and immigrant families. So we do some of that with home visits. We do home visits with our pre-K kids because we want to make sure our teachers connect with our students, and that's a part of being NACE accredited. They encourage that. And sometimes you just have to, I want to say, meet them where they're at find out where parents are, and if there's a organization in which you can, you know, as a superintendent, I would come out and say, you know what, I'm gonna be here at so and so a time, and you know, if you are available, please come in and ask questions. You know, I want to say a opportunity for the superintendent to kind of listen and learn from what parents and families have to say.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Tracy, if you were to leave Fort Wayne, what would you be most proud of and accomplishing and leaving behind as your legacy?
I would say it would be my curriculum development work. That has been huge here. We've engaged a lot of teachers in that work. It's been a learning process. I also, my special ed department is another one that I'm very pleased with. In that we're now having our special ed department not just be about compliance, making sure IEPs are written correctly and timelines are met. We have entered the conversation of ensuring that all students, even those students with disabilities, have access and the supports they need to access the district's core curriculum and be successful. Now, there are some students who have what I call severe disabilities and they need an alternate program, but for like our mild disability kids, given the right supports, I anticipate that they can be very successful. And that is a conversation that, and I will speak for myself as an educator with as long as I've been, that's not always been the conversation. And so we're beginning to have those conversations about all kids should be expected to learn at high levels. The question is, what do we need to do to help support them and get them there?
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Question 3, morale has been an issue in the district. What is the first step you take as CEO of the Lorain City Schools to bridge the gap between teachers and the administration in decisions like policies and procedures and curriculum? Please be specific if possible.
Okay. I think you need to, I would come in listening more so than anything. And I think when administration comes up with policies and procedures, you need to have multiple perspectives. And so I've learned that administrators can't go off deciding stuff and not have multiple voices at the table. And because what I've realized is everybody who's sitting there comes with a different lens, and you have to respect that. And so in doing that, you try to make adjustments. And let me give you an example. I'll be honest, I was a teacher who followed the rules. When I became an administrator, I realized that not everybody listened to their principal. And so one of the things that happened in Fort Wayne here is that we had, I want to say 150 teachers writing curriculum. We thought that they owned it because they were participated, they had a voice, they did the writing. We didn't tell them what they needed to do. We gave them guidelines and parameters, but they could do it. When we started the school year, people were just outraged. Well, we had 150 people participate, but we have 1,900 teachers. So I was just kind of like frazzled. And so what I realized was that we should have piloted that the first year. So we said, okay, we got it. We own it. I owned it. And so we said the following year, the curriculum that we write, because we picked up some other content areas the following summer, we didn't roll it out district-wide. We only had those teachers who wrote it, piloted, and then they came back the following summer and they made modifications and adjustments. We provided professional learning, and then it was rolled out district-wide. And that was one of those things that I realized that, you know what, sometimes you think you're doing what's right, but then there's a hiccup in the road, and it was an opportunity to learn. And so I value having multiple perspectives based on that specific situation.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, question 4. The Lorain City Schools has its challenges with low performance, staff and student morale. What are the most important elements when implementing a working plan for the district that sets the district in a positive path?
I say recognizing the successes. I think sometimes we get caught up in what's not working. We forget that sometimes there are things that are working really, they're going pretty well. And the other piece is not just what's working well, but you have to recognize the work that people do. And I'm guilty of it. I'm one of those people who kind of move forward and go, okay, what can I do to get better? How can I fix this? Or what do I need to do differently? But sometimes I have to pause, and I think we all need to pause. And we need to recognize teachers who do phenomenal work. We need to recognize principals who do great work. I'm sure we have students who are doing very well. And then those students who may struggle, the question becomes, who talks to them, who owns them, have relationships with them to figure out what could be the pivot, the thing that could get them to change their perspective. I think most people go into education to want to do good work and to support kids. And so we need to focus on that more than we focus on what's not. I mean, we focus on what's not working because we need to get better, but we also need to recognize what is going well. And so that's a huge thing for me, is making sure that we do take time to say, yeah, we may be struggling in this area, but this is what we are doing well in.
Thank you. And any follow-ups to that? Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question.
Sure.
Tracy, you had indicated that, you were a parent and you were a single parent.
Mm-hmm.
And what were some of the positive things that were presented to you as a single parent that helped you deal with raising children and being a single parent and having your children be successful in school?
So, it was helpful when teachers said something positive about my kids, but many times it was also confirming some things for me. So for example, one of my sons, I have 3 sons, and the older 2, one of them struggled in school. And so I worked diligently with his teachers to put structures in place for him to be successful. And so we worked hand in glove. And being an educator, I could not, especially like a principal or assistant principal, I'm at school when they're at school and when the teachers are at school. So whether it was shoot me an email or calling me at work. The other piece was I had a relationship with the teachers because they knew what I was trying to do for my kids. They knew that I had high expectations, but they knew that I couldn't always be there, which I really, really appreciated. So I worked very closely with teachers to be able to say, they gave me strategies. And there's some things that I was like, because I was a middle school person, so I could do middle school, but when you tell me about elementary reading, back then, I may not have known all of the things I knew about it. So they explained stuff to me. They gave me resources. And so they steered me to the camps that would be beneficial for my son. So that was those were the things that helped me help my kids be successful. So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Question 5 is establishing community partnerships has been difficult due to the lack of continuity in the district in building level leadership.
Mm-hmm.
What will you do to gain the support and trust necessary to benefit from solid relationships with willing community partners?
I think sometimes internally we have to ask ourselves, okay, so if I'm hearing you correctly, there's turnover in principal leadership. Is that what I'm hearing?
In general.
In general, okay. So the question becomes, what are the consistents? And so it could be teacher leaders, but I think that could kind of bridge the gap. But then the other question is, how do we support and ensure that we have leaders who are in the building who are going to be there and who own the district vision and then can support that vision with community partners. And so I'm sure that it may be challenging for some building leaders because, and I will say this as a principal, back when I was a principal, I didn't understand all of what my superintendent was doing. When I ended up in central office, I go, okay, that made sense why they may potentially had done certain things. But I think there has to be trust and relationships at all levels of the organization in order for people to own and buy into the vision and then be able to articulate that vision with community partners. And so that would be my goal, is that there would be those type of relationships, and then people would stay. One of the things, I believe is that when there's consistent leadership at the top, then people will kind of own it and stay in if they know that there is going to be some consistency and clear expectations. Because the other piece is you can have the same leader, but if you don't have high expectations and the support necessary to achieve them, that can cause some challenges. So I hope I answered all of that. If I didn't, just let me know.
Well, yeah, if you didn't, all 12 of them have the opportunity to follow up right now if they want to.
I do have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
Speaking to the consistent leaders at the top, if House Bill 70 did go away, which we're hoping it will, would you consider staying on as a superintendent if the Board of Education power was returned?
Yes, ma'am. And I don't like to job hop or district hop. It's just, I like to see work through, and it's just me. And so I'm of the mindset that I'll stay as long as the board wants me and supports the work that needs to happen for kids. Because I think ultimately that's what my goal is. My vision is to support kids be successful. And then helping with the kids be successful and families, it helps the whole community. So
I'd like to ask a question. Can you explain what you do on your job for us? What is it exactly that you do, and how big is the district that you're working with?
Okay. Fort Wayne Community Schools has 29,000 students, approximately 29,000 students. We have a superintendent. We have 5 chiefs. We have the chief operations officer, the chief financial officer, the chief of school leadership, and the chief of family and community engagement, and we have a legal counsel. So there's 5 of us. I am the chief academic officer. I am responsible for curriculum, instruction, and assessments, Title I, ELL, and special education. So my departments are, I want to say, all that is academics, so to speak, are in my camp. I am we have 1,900 teachers in our district. I want to say about 900 paraprofessionals. We have 50 schools, APs, guidance counselors. I mean, we have a huge staff. So when we do professional learning, we plan all of that for the curriculum development work. And we this year, this summer, we would have had not COVID happened, we would have had probably 350, I think, teachers who would have been writing and revising curriculum. And this summer, we just did a textbook adoption for social studies and some other content areas, some other ancillary content areas. So that was done, and we roll that out. We're going to be implementing a new assessment system for next school year. So my team, along with some principals and some directors for that work with principals, participate in the vetting process for that. So I supervise the special ed director, the curriculum director, the manager for Title I, and the manager for ELL. I work with the district's technology department or director to ensure that we have instructional technology for all of our schools. And one of the things that I did when I came on board was we developed I want to call it a model classroom. Basically, it laid out what the expectation was for technology for every classroom in the district, especially when we did some remodeling and work throughout the district, renovations. So does that help?
It does help. How well did your district do as far as testing was concerned, based on your state?
Let me say this. I've been here 6 years. The assessment has changed every other year. Yeah. So we haven't had any consistency. I will say that.
I get that. Thank you.
Okay. I have another question here, Tracy, and it's one that's going to be very difficult to answer, but we're going to ask it because it was asked. Come August, COVID-19 will still be with us. Mm-hmm. How do you envision the start of the school year, and what resources do you believe need to be in place to have a successful start to the school year?
So that's been heavy on my mind. First, again, it requires a team approach. One of my questions is, what is the technology infrastructure for the district? So who has access to technology and who does not? When I say who has technology, so do students have access and do teachers have access? And if teachers have access, do they know how to use it? Do you have an LMS system? And what is the level of implementation with teachers? Is your curriculum accessible through the LMS? Do you have, I want to call it programs or software that can be accessible to students via technology from a district perspective? And what does that look like for various grade levels? The other question I have is for like PPEs, what is the expectation around PPEs? Do people do, and I know Ohio is a little bit ahead. When I say ahead, you guys closed down quicker than Indiana did. We were a little behind, but we seem to be opening up a little earlier. What is the guidance from the governor, the state board of ed, because you have to follow that, as well as the CDC. Our district nurse just forwarded me some information. I think it might have been earlier today, or that she got from the CDC that has to be reviewed to have those conversations. What is your, I want to call it cleaning service or maintenance department? How frequently are they cleaning? Those become questions. The size of the facility, their classrooms, because in some places I've heard that, some options were staggered starts or alternating days. There are a variety of things floating out there. And I'm sure your school board association and your superintendent association can provide guidance on that, on some of the things, on the recommendations. So I think it would be the district team in collaboration with school board members coming together and outlining a plan very quickly So I can't give you any specifics on what that might look like, but there are a lot of things that need to be taken into consideration for opening up for the beginning of a new school year.
Okay. Question 7. We have levy renewals approaching and the need for new monies ahead.
Mm-hmm.
If you needed to make reductions, what is your process for doing that? And how do you handle a budget?
So first and foremost, my thought would be to minimize the impact at the classroom level. Because when you start there, you're gonna impact kids. And of course, that's what you wanna limit. I'll be honest, one of the things, I've been out of Ohio for a minute, so Ohio finance is one of those areas that I would do quick homework, because that's one of those areas that I would rely on the chief financial officer to support me around. But I don't think that I would have much difficulty. I think people need to recognize options as well. So for example, in minimizing the I want to say trauma, but cuts from the classroom, the question becomes, what options are there? And then working with the board and the community to kind of figure out, okay, what would be the best option? I always feel like the superintendent's role is to do the research and development and bring certain things to the board and then talk them through with making a recommendation. It goes back to the collaboration. And then I think making sure community is very clear on what the expenditures are. So there has to be, I'm going to call it financial transparency. There has to be a level of transparency around district resources. People can't think that you're misusing dollars. And so you have to be honest and open about it. And then the other thing, I think one of the things that I've been blessed with in Fort Wayne, as well as in my other position, was that at some point in time, you have to see if there's ways to come up with extra dollars. When I say extra, supplemental dollars to support some of the work, whether it's professional learning or something. So grant funds or foundation dollars, at some point, that should be something that is explored. But I think making sure that you work with your community partners and letting them know how dollars are being used, and that there's a level of transparency, I think is definitely important.
All right, thank you. And that brings us to our last question, and then we'll have an opportunity for any of the members to ask anything that we've missed. How will you collaborate with parents, teachers, and the school board / distress commission?
I think having opportunities for me to connect with them at various times. I think I mentioned previously, like working with the PTA is always, in my mind, if you have an active PTA, a good vehicle. Also, community organizations, I think is very helpful to be able to have conversations with people in those organizations who can help champion the district cause and the district work. I think communication, you have to have a variety of communication channels. So whether I'm not a big tweeter, but having a mechanism for sharing your message, your story, and getting people's input. So you can't just tell it, you have to get input on what people think. And sometimes, I'm gonna be the first to say, sometimes the public can be like, make you cringe a little bit because they're hard on you. But if you can, honestly stand there and say, this is in the best interest of kids and teachers and principals, because you can't leave any of them out, as well as parents, then I think you can make a good case. And everything is not going to work for everybody. And I've realized in my tenure as an educator, everybody's not going to always be happy. But when you can stand up and say, I'm doing what I think is best for kids, and you can actually state why you think it's best for kids, I think people are a little bit more understanding, or at least I would hope they are. So I think one of the things I thought about, I said 2 boards, oh gosh. But I would be the connector, so to speak. I'm that thing in the middle, just kind of making sure that everybody hears what's going on, taking back and processing what each group has to say, and then embedding their input in the work that has to be done.
Okay. Thank you for that answer. And at this time, do any of our community members have any concluding questions for Tracy before she leaves us?
No?
That must mean you were very good at delivering your answers.
Real quick, Tracy, I won't put you on the spot here too much, but you mentioned communication and the different channels to get information out. Did I read online that there are 70 languages spoken in the Fort Wayne Community School District? 70?
Yes.
70?
70, yes.
70. So, I mean, did you find that you had to have different communication, different ways to communicate to 70 different communities?
Yeah, so we have we have Spanish, Burmese, and there's a couple of other ones that we focus on. And so we have translators and interpreters. So like when we have a document that we need to get out, so like COVID, my translators and interpreters were very busy because we contracted. My ELL manager is very good about, we have software, we have contracted with people. What else have we done? So that we can translate documents relatively quickly, because we can usually do it in about 24 hours. And so that was one of my big learning curves. So the other piece is I'm in the process right now of working on my dissertation. And as part of my coursework for my doctorate, one of the things I did, because I wanted to make sure I was knowledgeable in areas, ELL, like my minor is school law. So ELL law, special ed law, school law in general was a big thing for me, because I wanted to make sure I was giving people accurate information and I knew how to research if I didn't know something. So yeah, we have an amazing, and it's been, our department was recognized by the state of Indiana, was it year before last? So and it's not me, I have awesome people. Okay. And that's another, so that, let me just, this is the other thing. I always believe in making sure you hire awesome people and you let them do what they do. Because most of the time they know, they have the expertise. And so with the board, you lay out a vision and they find their role and responsibility within that vision, and then they do the work. She's amazing, I will just say.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Any others before we conclude this?
Okay.
Okay.
This has been awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy, for joining us.
No problem.
Have a good night.
You too.